to the last session of the Summit 2022. And the best way to close the session is with you, Steve. Come on, VP of Product Manager of Endpoint Manager and Windows. I have to say thank you. But as the owner of the group, to be honest, I really appreciate you accepting the invitation, to be honest. And you are facing, now we are closing very soon, 22,000 members, which is, and to be honest, Steve, for your information, we are 22,000 members passionate of this technology. So think about it. What you are going to speak today is a very extremely interesting for us. So that's one of the decisions I say, I can't miss it to say hello to you and thank you so much on behalf of all those people that we are passionate about that. Thank you again. And by the way, Mattias Melkersen, who is been working very, very hard for the agenda. Thank you, Mattias, by the way. He did a very nice work to organize and to invite people and get it on a crazy day. And he going to take care of the question and answer at the end. Okay, I hear that probably he got a question for you, where he had to respect the term, okay? But it is very nice, and I think that let's just start, because just listen to you. We are here just listen to you. So go ahead, please. Go ahead.
All right, wonderful.
I'll put mute myself. Good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the warm welcome and for the introduction. My name is Steve Dispensa, and I could not be more excited to be here. It's such a humbling experience to get to address 20,000 of our biggest fans. This is something that we work hard on here at Microsoft. We have a large team, but we enjoy the work, but there's nothing that gives us more energy and happiness in our work than getting to work directly with our products fans. So really, I'm the one who should thank you, and I do thank you for bringing all of this energy and giving me the opportunity here. Let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint with you. Hang on one second. All right. All right. Are you able to see it? You are not.
Not yet.
Let me try again here. One second. Oh, good. I have the sharing prompt up. One moment, please. I'm so sorry. I should have done the permissions before joining.
It's no worries. We know it's the Zoom platform, and you should be doing Microsoft Teams, right?
Yes, it is true that I spend my entire day in Teams, and there we go. Let me allow this. One moment, please. So while I'm changing this, I understand we're at the end of a long day. Oh, good. Oh, goodness. I'm going to have to exit and reopen Zoom. I'm going to go ahead and do that because otherwise we'll not be able to share my slides. So I will be right back.
All right.
We'll sing and dance in between. So while Steve is fixing his Zoom, I think this is on purpose. He's just demonstrating that he's from Microsoft, and sharing on Zoom is not making him happy. What do you think, Angel?
Yeah, we need to change, definitely. Especially since Dispensa is here. Well, come on. The next time. It's a good learning. It's our first Summit, so we are learning anyway. So that is for the next.
Yeah, I know that Steve is a very popular person. It's taken a lot of effort to get Steve on board, but once we got hold of his PM, that was easy from there.
Exactly. So no, let's he's going back, and then we're going to. Or otherwise, what we can do maybe is if he share the slide. He's back. Okay. How's it going?
Yeah. Audio connecting. Let's see if the sharing is
All right.
also working.
Do we
Hi,
feel
Steve.
lucky?
We feel lucky.
All right, here we go. One more time. Share. There we go. That's progress. All right. Tell me when you can see it.
Oh,
Brilliant.
Well done.
Thank you.
muy bien. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry for the delay. Now I'm going to really pick up the pace here because I know we're tight on time and I don't want to keep you from your evenings here. But let's roll. So we're going to do 5 items on the agenda here. I'm going to start with a quick strategy overview on Endpoint Manager. And I'll talk a little bit about our newly announced advanced management bundle. And then I'll talk a little bit about our Windows commercial strategy. And I'll do that just so that you have a frame of reference for the bulk of our session, which is really about roadmap. And then we're going to get into nuts and bolts on roadmap. I am going to go all the way deep because I know this is an audience that likes details. And I guarantee I can't fit all the detail in that I would like to in this short period that we have together. But I'm going to give it a try. And hopefully there will be plenty of questions here in Q&A at the end. Mattias or Angel, can you remind me what our stop time is so I make sure I save enough time for Q&A?
Yeah, I will definitely do that, but 35 minutes from now. Let's try that.
Yeah, 35 from now. Okay, great. So yeah. I will certainly, I will jam through this by the bottom of the hour or perhaps by 35 after the hour. Good deal. Okay, well, first of all, let's start with MEM and strategy trends. And this is the lightest weight strategy conversation I think we can have about Endpoint Manager, but I think it's important for people to understand the way we see the world evolving, because it helps you sort of predict where we're going to go next. It helps you predict what areas of the product we're putting the most energy into, and it helps you ultimately make better decisions for yourselves and for your customers. And so, you know, when I think about where the world is going for endpoint management, we've got 3 big established trends we've been talking about for a while. We think they're still fully intact. The first one is hybrid is here to stay. And I mean hybrid everything. You know, apps that are deployed in the cloud or locally running on endpoints or running on VMs, users using laptops or desktops or, you know, Apple or Android devices. We think that, and especially users working in more than one location. We think that is a trend that's here to stay. We think most people, like myself included, have a setup office at home or some ability to work at home and an ability to work at the office. And most organizations, including Microsoft, as they come back to the office, are keeping the ability for users to work remotely because you never know when you're going to need that. And besides, lots of people enjoy it. And so that has major impacts on our strategy. Probably the single most important impact on endpoint management strategy is making hybrid work really well. The second big strategy trend, also remaining intact, unfortunately, is the world is not getting to be any safer. The needs of security continue to rise. Attacks continue to gain sophistication. Everything going back to, for example, the SolariGate attack from early 2020 to more recent world events have driven an increased need for endpoint management for zero trust. You cannot do zero trust if you don't have control over your endpoint. So that trend is here to stay. It's an area we're investing heavily in. And then the third big trend that I think stays intact is moving management into the cloud. So much of what we do over the coming years is going to be cloud delivered value that will still use the endpoint. We're, of course, going to continue supporting and loving ConfigMan on premises. It continues to be invested in and evolved. But over time, so much of our differentiated value is going to be cloud-powered value from things like cloud-based analytics. And so getting the connection through tenant attach or co-management or even native moves to the cloud, something that we see more and more customers doing. In fact, I had made a bold call a couple of years ago when we were at 5% cloud connected, that we were going to hit 50% cloud connected by the end of this fiscal year, by July. And we're close. We're at about 44% now. The biggest quarter of growth is always this quarter that we're coming into. So it'll be a stretch to get to exactly 50, but we're very close. And the real story is most large organizations at this point are either doing co-management or tenant attach or are deploying cloud native, in addition to whatever they have going on with config MEM. Two other markets that I've talked about a bunch, I won't elaborate too much on, but one is all of Microsoft 365 is focusing on empowering frontline workers in order to do their jobs more effectively. So we have lots of technology development coming there. I'll talk about some on a roadmap. And the other big growth area for Microsoft is SMB. This was the fastest growing segment of the Endpoint Manager business during calendar year 2021. And it's off to an incredible start in 22. We just GA'd M365 for Lighthouse a couple of weeks ago, and we're now seeing over 1,000 new partners a month joining the system. And so if you haven't already, go check that out. Finally, two emerging trends that I just want to highlight. This is more what we think of as Horizon 2, but it's something that is important already in our planning. The first of those two trends is rising tech intensity overall, just generally, whether it's driven by hybrid, whether it's driven by security, whether it's driven by the shift to the cloud or something else entirely, the tech intensity that our IT pros have to deal with continues to rise. There's never been sort of a more intensive technology world than there is today. And the flip side is the talent pool is not growing as fast as the need. More and more IT pro jobs are open around the world, in the United States, in Europe, and worldwide. And we're seeing lots of people who've been in the IT space for 20, 30 years, taking part of the great reshuffle, or maybe retiring early. And so these two trends have really made us think internally about what can we do to radically simplify endpoint management, including through things like advanced analytics. And you'll see me talk about those in a minute. So that is the fastest 5 minutes I can do on MEM strategy. I'm glad to dive into any of these in questions, but I do want to quickly highlight advanced management, because we announced this 2 days ago at the Management Summit, at the Windows Commercial Summit. And if you didn't get a chance to watch the videos, please do. There was some amazing stuff that we talked about, including a management track that I hosted on Tuesday. Our vision, though, we announced advanced management as a suite of adjacent solutions to the current core, MEM product. And these are solutions that we'll be delivering over the coming months and even a couple of years. There are things that are brought to us, ideas that are brought to us, and needs that are brought to us by our customers. This is your feedback that has become incorporated into our roadmap. And we've picked solution areas where we think there's a unique Microsoft point of view, where we can do something because there are products, we can do something that's especially well integrated or is integrated across Microsoft 365 or directly into Windows. And so that's kind of our theme for the advanced management bundle. We're starting with an initial solution on remote help, more on that on the next slide, but we're going to expand over time. And a couple of things we also have talked about, including the April 5th event, is we talked about endpoint privilege management, which is a solution to allow end users to run as standard user and have policy controlled elevation that's managed by IT so that you don't have to deploy end users as local admins anymore. Another one that we've talked about recently is new micro VPN support in Endpoint Manager. We have support for fully managed devices that we've brought out. We started talking about, last year. We are now bringing out micro VPN support for the mobile application management capabilities in Endpoint Manager. So really excited about that. And I said I would double click on remote help. If you haven't seen the event, go take a look. There's a great demo, but just briefly, remote help is available now, generally available, and is designed for this world that we're all in of hybrid work, where you can no longer depend on end users being able to go down to the IT help desk for support. And this is really designed to bring that Microsoft specific point of view on what remote help means, fully integrated with Azure Active Directory, fully integrated with Endpoint Manager, so that we can do things like, we know if the endpoint is in compliance with policy as the remote help session is starting, so we can actually warn the helper, hey, be careful, this endpoint is out of compliance. It doesn't have current malware definitions, or it's not running a firewall or whatever. And it allows, number one, it puts the helper on notice, don't type anything sensitive into this endpoint. And number two, it allows the helper to bring that device back into compliance before troubleshooting the real problem that the user brings to IT. So we're really excited about this. It's generally available now, and can't wait to get more feedback on it. Okay, let me shift gears very quickly to Windows commercial strategy. We talked about this in depth at the April event, and so I'll just quickly highlight where we are. When we think about Windows commercial, we think about planning into 4 big strategy buckets for the next version of Windows 11, as well as for a couple of years even beyond. The first big bucket is signature Windows experiences to power hybrid work. You saw us start with things like Snap Assist, which an amazing number of you have given me feedback about how helpful that is to your enterprise users. We're also thinking about things like improved collaboration, native integration of Teams into the operating system, and so much more, because it all has to begin with creating a calm and peaceful and joyful experience for your end users. And we have amazing feedback so far from the first few months of Windows 11 that bears this out. This is the highest customer satisfaction version of Windows we have ever released, going back decades. And so thank you for all of you who helped us co-design it. And we're going to continue pouring energy into the experience for end users. I mentioned Zero Trust already as a reaction to a permanently changed world. Most orgs are implementing a Zero Trust philosophy at this point, and Windows 11 is the first operating system designed for the Zero Trust world. We hear often that simplicity and consistency are critical for IT. And so we've invested heavily there in areas such as making sure that Windows 11 and Windows 10 run perfectly smoothly side by side. They can be managed from the same set of endpoint management policies. And you can really just kind of plug and play Windows 11 into your environment. And finally, frontline worker innovation. You've heard Microsoft talk a lot about frontline workers over the last couple of years. We've had an enormous amount of growth in the frontline worker space, and we're going to be innovating deeply in Windows 11 for frontline worker. Okay, with that, I'm going to jump right into our roadmap. And I'm going to, like I said, this is going to be very data intense. Please don't hesitate to save some questions up for the end as I jam through this here. Just to help you kind of understand what you're going to see in the roadmap, when we plan Endpoint Manager and Windows Commercial, we do it in a set of planning pillars. And so that's the way the next slides are going to be organized. One of our pillars is on the core of Endpoint Manager and the analytics work, which we've brought into the core. So analytics, which began life kind of as a Windows-focused capability, has been the teams have been merged, and it's now been brought fully into the core of Endpoint Manager, and that'll help us innovate further in analytics throughout the product. The second pillar is Windows, the operating system, and the PC as a platform. Lots and lots of innovation. They're probably the biggest planning bucket that we have. Apple, Linux, and MEM form another bucket for kind of historical reasons. There's sort of three things that don't go together at a glance, but they have a lot of shared technology under the hood. Android is a universe unto itself. We are best of breed in Android as well as in Apple. We intend to stay that way. And there's tons and tons of work going on in Android. And finally, Microsoft 365, I think, is really the most important competitive differentiator for Endpoint Manager. And it's kind of the red thread that runs through everything we do. And so we'll talk about that. And in addition, I'll talk about what's on the roadmap for Windows Commercial. So, ready or not, here we go. Let's start with Windows and the PC platform. So much going on here. I should say all of these slides are very tiny subsets of the 200 slide planning deck that I reviewed just last week for our second quarter calendar 22 plan. But I'll call a few out here because I think they're just incredible value. One, driver and firmware updates in the cloud. We just reviewed this again with the senior leadership team here at Microsoft. And it's just so exciting to finally be able to use the same machinery that we use for Windows updates, for driver and firmware updates with full control through Endpoint Manager for when you want to deploy deployment rings, deployment monitoring in progress. And over time, we're going to be adding advanced analytics to help you monitor and manage those driver and firmware update deployments. Can't wait for that to be broadly deployed. Another thing that's on our roadmap is app uninstall from the company portal. We expect we'll deliver that this year. It's such a tiny thing, and yet one of those frequently asked questions that we get all over the place. So really excited for that. Another one is, getting and setting custom Windows client attributes. This is kind of a Swiss Army knife policy that we're going to deploy for a whole bunch of different solutions. We've had lots of customers ask us here. It's going to really help, especially surface deeper capabilities with our OEMs. So the Dells and Lenovos and HPs and Surfaces of the world will have better ability to get capabilities directly into Endpoint Manager for you to manage. Skipping down a couple of AVD things I'd like to call out. Azure Virtual Desktop, our first party VDI solution. Many of you are using it. I know this because the growth in this service is just phenomenal. It's off the chart. We are running as fast as we can to enrich our support in AVD, and we're going to be supporting very soon user policy support for AVD for multi-session environments. This is a far more economical way to run AVD if it happens to work in your environment. We've already announced and are bringing very soon device config support for AVD for multi-session environments. So lots of good stuff there. And then two security features I'll pull off the end of the list here. One is enrollment notifications. Anytime a user registers a new device, enrolls a new device, they get a notification in their email and through push to all their devices that a new device has been enrolled. This is just like many of you have had this experience with consumer services with your bank or whatever. And this is inspired by that and is going to be a great little sort of additional safeguard against a rogue enrolled device. And the other big time safeguard, we can't wait to get this out, is enrollment hardening. We are going to bind the client certificate that comes from enrollment to the TPM on Windows, making that certificate unliftable and unmovable. Really excited about that as well. Segue from Windows MEM to Windows itself. We made a ton of big announcements. I'll recap a few of them here. There are lots of demos in the Tuesday videos I would encourage you to take a look at as well if you haven't. But lots of good stuff coming for Windows itself. One that we didn't talk a lot about Tuesday, but we will be talking about more shortly here, is the store of the future. As you know, we've had kind of a transitional phase in the Windows store for commercial, for business and for commercial users. We're now transitioning to a store based on Winget with support directly in Endpoint Manager for both public repositories and private repositories. I just reviewed this the other day, and it's just fantastic. It's exactly what you would want for complete fine-grained control over app management on Windows. I'm really excited. I think it's going to set us up for a really long-term success in app management in Windows, an area we've been needing for really since the dawn of Windows 10. I mentioned Windows for Frontline. We disclosed that we're working on an edition of Windows that's streamlined for frontline workers. We're early. We're not ready to start talking about this in bulk yet, but you'll see us begin to trickle out information over the summer with a private preview program that'll begin later this year. And we're excited. This is going to be a bold step forward for Windows into an experience and an OS tailored for frontline workers and natively supported by Endpoint Manager with built-in controls that allow a fully native and cloud-based management experience for frontline workers. Really excited about that. Another one that we talked about is native integration of IT-targeted messaging for your end users. This is based on feedback that we heard during the pandemic about users at home feeling disconnected from IT. And so we've made a bunch of investments across Microsoft to make users feel like they're part of the family again. But this is one of them, the ability to land specific messaging on the lock screen, on getting started, and other places within the Windows UX with IT-controlled messaging. And over time, we're going to continue to enrich this capability for better targeting, machine learning-based analytics on how messages are landing with your users, two-directional messaging with responses and feedback. Lots more interesting stuff coming there. Another one I just cannot wait to launch is Endpoint Manager is finally getting support for MEM on Windows. We have MEM on Android and iOS, and it's the largest single adopted mobility capability in the world, not just in our product, but worldwide. And it's been a huge hit. We're now bringing it to Windows so that people on Windows Home Edition can access IT-managed M365 apps and other apps through a dedicated profile in Edge. And IT has complete control over the profile and only over the profile. So you can do things like, you know, applying data protection to the profile, or even if a user leaves the company, you can remote wipe that profile. And because it's just the profile, it doesn't have access or impact on anything else on that user's PC. So it preserves privacy, which is good for both the end user and for IT that doesn't want to take over personal devices more than necessary anyway. Can't wait for that to come out later this year. I mentioned token binding earlier as a way to protect the enrollment token. We're also doing the same thing to protect identity tokens, hardware bound to the TPM in the device, making Azure AD authentication tokens unliftable. That's rolling out over the next year. And will sort of be very phased because of the way the app ecosystem works, but it's coming out in bulk, and I cannot wait. That'll be a big improvement just to the security of our whole ecosystem. And finally, these ones have to be seen to be believed, but you all know we've put a huge amount of energy into Windows 365. We are natively integrating Win365 directly into Windows. No more downloading and installing the remote desktop app. No more users hunting around for URLs to subscribe to feeds. All that is in the past. Through Endpoint Manager, you'll be able to provision a user for a cloud PC in Windows 365, and automatically that will show up in the taskbar in the desktop switcher as part of their Windows 11 experience. We're even going to allow direct boot to the cloud for users, for Windows 365 end users to get directly into their cloud VM, which will be a great scenario for frontline workers and many other situations. So much great commercial value here. This is the most commercial value we have ever put into Windows. I'm so excited to see this stuff ship over the next year. This is all early, right? Most of this stuff is coming in fall, but I wanted to give you a sneak peek. This is a roadmap session after all. All right, I'm going to speed up a little more if that's possible and get through the core of MEM here. And I'm going to do that by only highlighting a couple of things on the roadmap here. One of the things that I think is another cool security thing that we're bringing out now is dual admin approval. The idea here is that Endpoint Manager is a very powerful product and has an enormous amount of control over devices. And so we're adding a belt and suspenders capability so that certain actions will require the approval of a second MEM admin in order to take those actions. We're starting with a couple of highly powerful sort of destructive actions that we wouldn't want like a disgruntled insider to be able to take alone, things like deploying apps and scripts. And over time, we're going to bring more and more MEM capabilities under the umbrella of dual admin approval. Really excited about that. And then I'll just do the quickest shout out in Endpoint Analytics for Windows 11 upgrade readiness. If you haven't checked it out, please do. It'll help you plan your Windows 11 deployment, knowing about the hardware that you have and the rings and capabilities that you need. Moving to the Apple, Linux, and MEM pillar, lots of incredible stuff coming here. I'm just going to cherry pick one or two, unfortunately, for time. One I'll talk about is quiet time. This is a capability that allows you to configure quiet hours for your employees who you don't want to be bothered outside of business hours. This is especially important for frontline workers, for hourly employees who, you want to make sure there's a strong work-life separation for them. And in some cases, you don't even want them to have access, let alone be notified to M365. So we're going to be bringing this out. Can't wait for that. And then the other one that I will pop out of the list here, I'm going to do two. One of them is multiple managed accounts for MEM. This will allow you to enroll more than one user account on a device. Today, you can only enroll one user account for MEM managed applications, which is frustrating if you happen to be a consultant or if you happen to volunteer at an organization in addition to your day job, and they both want to use MEM policies. And so we're going to fix it. It's one of our top pain points in MEM. It is the top pain point in MEM. Cannot wait to have this come out later this year. And the last one is, I've been talking about this a lot, and I am so excited to have Linux support finally coming out this summer for conditional access and desktop management. This is going to plug a long-standing hole in our product line and in many of our customers' conditional access policies by enabling you to apply the same CA policy to Linux that you apply to Windows. This is just the beginning. We're starting with Ubuntu. We're going to bring more distributions out, many more distributions out. We're going to also continue to enrich the support for Linux on the endpoint. But this is really the first major tranche of capabilities, and it's going to unblock a ton of customers. So I'm really excited. Can't wait to hear your feedback on that. Android is an amazingly dense area for us. It's as varied as the Android ecosystem itself. And Android is maybe the tip of the spear when it comes to frontline workers. And so it gets extra emphasis and energy from us. You probably saw our Ignite talk last year where Rami and I talked about AOSP management support for RealWear devices. Of course, we're going to extend AOSP support to many other devices. We didn't just build it as a one-off, we built it as a platform. And we have more and more devices that will be managed with AOSP over the coming months and years. There's a whole lot of other work that's on here. Maybe I'll call out the bottom row as well, because it's especially interesting. Oh my gosh, it's the bottom row and it's further up. I liked it so much I listed it twice. My apologies. Android Remote Assist. We talked about Windows Remote Help. This will be the Android piece of Remote Help, but it's a slightly different design point. Of course, you want to be able to help interactive users with their devices. And of course, the solution will do that. But in addition, there's a big time requirement from frontline worker devices, especially shared devices, where IT needs to be able to do remote work on a device without needing an interactive user. A user needs to be able to pick up a device, find that there's something wrong with it, put it back on the rack and pick up another one and walk away. We don't want to take the user's time to do remote assistance. And so that's going to be a core capability of Android Remote Assist. Can't wait to get that out as well. Last area is so big it spills onto 2 jam-packed slides, and so I'm going to cherry pick a little bit off of each of them here. The first one here, I talked a little bit, or in fact, I've already talked about endpoint privilege management. So I'll just say this is coming out in the fall. Cannot wait for standard user. It's one of the top asks from any of our customers, from many of our customers. And then skipping down the list, I want to talk about another Linux capability. So we're bringing out full management support for Linux, and that's going to be great. It's going to be very helpful for orgs that are ready to adopt it. There will be other orgs that aren't ready to adopt Linux fully into management. And so we're actually going to support a lightweight attachment just from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So if you want to roll out Defender for Endpoint, it'll still be manageable in the MEM console without necessarily needing to do a full device enrollment. Obviously, we hope everybody does full enrollment. Obviously, we've all been in this business long enough to know that you don't snap your fingers and make big changes overnight in IT. And so this is a tool that we've designed to allow organizations to rapidly adopt MDE in this world of rapidly changing security, and then bring in full management support behind that on the schedule that works for you. And then moving to my last roadmap slide. A couple of things I want to talk about. First of all, settings catalog has been just enormously successful. There are 11,000 settings in settings catalog. We've gotten tons of feedback, both positive and, hey, you bozos, you missed a section of settings. We love it all. Please keep the feedback coming. Cannot wait to continue to build on this. I think I mentioned, we talked about remote help and MEM in this product area already. Let me get down to Windows custom compliance, because this is one that we've seen a lot of organizations use here. It's really kind of a Swiss Army knife policy for Windows, especially. If you haven't taken a look at it, do. It's an incredibly powerful capability that allows you to bring lots of policies directly into Intune that may be more tailored or sort of customized policies that are in place in legacy environments. And so definitely would recommend taking a look at that. There is so much else here to talk about, but as I said, I wanted to really save some time for questions and answers. And so let me take a breath here and bring in Mattias, and we can, let me unshare my desktop and we can move on to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, that was pretty packed, but I think folks here on the call like the roadmap, what they see. And I got questions for you. Surprise, lots of questions. So why don't we get started, and then maybe you'll pass it on to someone more deep tech. I don't know. So let's see how deep it goes. So any plans on adding activation lock bypass for macOS devices on MEM? It's already possible for iOS, iPadOS through MEM, but not on macOS. And this is actually a blocker for many of these Mac customers to adopt MEM.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that we hear, as you said, it's a question that we hear regularly. It is on our roadmap. I don't have a date for you that I can share at this point. But when I say it's on our roadmap, it is something that is in active planning conversations. And so we've heard there are some differences, of course, between iOS and macOS, platform differences and nuances in the way we've integrated ourselves. But I don't have an announcement of a concrete announcement for you today.
Something good to wait for, I believe.
We can't deliver it all.
I mean, it's prioritizing, right? So that's how it is. Next question comes from Michael, and will endpoint privilege management available only for Windows, or are any plans to include for Mac OS, maybe other platforms? And what are the timeline?
Yeah, this is a great question. So thank you. This is so our initial plans for endpoint privilege management are for Windows. We are intending to support kind of all of the supported releases of Windows 11 and 10 at the time of privilege management release later this year. And, that's our first platform. We're going to get it right. We're going to tune up the policy management because, of course, there's just as much work happening in Endpoint Manager as there is in the Windows code base itself. And so that's our first priority. We will then turn our attention to Mac and Linux, probably in that order. We don't have a committed plan for either yet, and so I don't have a timeline I can share for you yet. But it is certainly it's our goal to fully to be able to enable our customers to deploy only MEMS endpoint privilege management without having to also deploy third-party tooling. And since most of our customers have all of these OSs in their environment, it's definitely something that we plan on doing, but I don't have a date yet.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. And then we have moving on to anonymous attendee. Will remote help support for Apple devices?
It's a similar answer. So, and the answer is yes, although it's third on the list. So we've GA'd just yesterday. We've GA'd remote help for Windows. It's big forward progress for that. We're all still excited about that. Remote help for Android is coming later this fall. And the reason we prioritized that number 2 is because we have an enormous number of customers that are pounding on us for frontline worker support. Totally legitimate. They're blocked. They need help desperately. That's next. Next after that will be Apple's platforms. And we don't have an ordering yet in terms of iOS, iPadOS, macOS. And the platform restrictions are somewhat different. iOS is a little bit more of a well-defined environment than Android is. And so we're still working through our design. And because of that, we don't have a date for it yet. But that will be coming. It's the same idea. Our goal is to create a solution that allows our customers to solve their whole problem and not necessarily require additional third-party products to solve the problem.
Right answer. So Angelo, he is writing TPM binding in MEM enrollment certificates on Windows sounds problematic for device as a service providers. We see devices switching tenants multiple times within a device lifecycle. I assume this can be turned off. We don't want to lock a device to a specific tenant.
It's a great question. Thank you for that. So there's a difference between acquiring an enrollment and binding the cert. And so the notion of enrollment cert binding is not to tenant lock the device. That's not the intention. The intention is to make it impossible to steal the certificate and replay it somewhere else. Now, you can always re-enroll a device. You can always unenroll and re-enroll a device. And of course, we've strengthened the enrollment process as well, both with notifications as well as with strong multi-factor authentication. We even strengthened the MFA support on enrollment over the last year. And so, that is ultimately the bottom line defense. But what we're doing with enrollment cert binding is making it impossible for a piece of malware or even a rogue user to lift the cert off of one device and implant it on another to impersonate the device.
Exactly. So we are talking security here and on the zero trust journey, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
So Jaco, he thinks that MEM for Edge sounds like a very great feature. How would you go about making sure that client Edge is running has some base security features? Like what about having a managed Edge profile with corporate data on a client without a password?
Yeah, great question. The reason that we're launching this with Edge, and it's such a partnership with Edge, is because we can, in fact, control all of these configuration parameters, including a knob for you to allow that managed, or to require a password or PIN for that managed Edge profile. So you'll be able to enforce exactly what you want. And in addition to that, there's one other thing I didn't mention, but I think is helpful to understand. We also will get the ability to do a lightweight assessment of the security posture on the device, similar to the way we do with Android and iOS, where in this case, every Windows computer for years has come with Windows Defender built in. Not the Defender Endpoint EDR product, but the baseline Windows Defender product. And we are plumbing that into the cloud so that we'll be able to sort of connect the dots on the Intune side. So that when we see someone trying to gain access to a work profile in Edge, we'll be able to validate that that device is compliant, not compliant with the full org set of policies, but is secure from a Windows Defender perspective. And so that combination of knowing we're running an Edge, knowing Defender is running and is sending a health signal, and then applying admin controlled policies to Edge itself for things like PIN or data wipe or disabling copy, paste, print, et cetera, will give you the same kind of experience that you're used to on iOS and Android for Edge.
Great answer. And we have 4 more questions now, Steve. So we'll just keep on, right? So Angelo, again, he will ask here that will OEM config configure the device settings be multi-vendor or Surface exclusive?
The OEM config work is designed to be multi-vendor. Most of what we do in Endpoint Manager, and in fact, in Windows itself, is designed to be multi-vendor. It's not uncommon for the Surface team to adopt our innovations first. They are right down the hall from us, the virtual hall in this day and age. But everything we do is designed to be is a platform. I think Surface is like, I don't know, the 5th or 6th largest OEM. The largest OEMs are still absolutely critical and important partners in the way most of our end users experience Windows. So yeah, we're absolutely building this to be a multi-platform story.
Very great, very great. So Ralph is asking, I think he wants more granular control in Intune and Defender for Endpoint. So granular controls, Intune and Defender for Endpoint, details in smaller rounds. I asked more into that question, but I have not more details on that. Maybe Ralph could write in the chat, or maybe you could try answer the question, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, just at a high level, yeah, I'd love to see the details. And by the way, I'm happy to take questions offline as well, and we can talk about how we can get questions back and forth to the team if you stump the chump, which is highly likely with me here. But yeah, we're rolling out granular policy support, if I understand what you mean properly, across three or four different channels. The cloud native channel, of course, you've seen us roll out granular support for MDE controls over tenant attach over the last year, and we're launching a new management capability that I'm so sorry, I don't know what our marketing team has formally named it, and so I'm going to give you our internal name. We're calling it MDE attach, but the idea is that we will allow devices that are not enrolled fully in MDM management to nevertheless communicate with our service, with the Intune service, over an MDE channel, over the normal MDE channel. So that MDE attach will then allow the same kind of configuration management on devices that are not enrolled in Intune. This is really important I talked about Linux earlier, but it's also really important for platforms that Intune doesn't support, like servers. And is an area we're going to keep investing in. We feel like it's also a good on-ramp into Intune. So you roll out MDE attach, maybe using a third-party MDM, although I don't know why you would do that. You see the awesomeness of the Intune portal, and you move into Intune.
Exactly. Why would you use anything else than MD? I couldn't agree more on that. So if you want to look in more into MDE and all that kind of stuff, Matt Call was on the session right before you, Steve. So go back and play that video in the platform. Next
Great.
question is from a anonymous attendee. Are there any plans to send Android and iOS logs generated from corporate portal GitHelp section, not just to Microsoft, but make them available in Endpoint Manager or Log Analytics?
That's a great question. So we are just a little bit of inside baseball. We are massively retooling our reporting and analytics infrastructure. We run at a pretty enormous scale. I think you all know that. And so we're actually restructuring our analytics pipelines to some of Azure's newest pipeline offerings. And for those of you who like to nerd out on data, the Azure data processing capabilities have grown so amazingly in the last 5 years. It's worth taking a week off work and just diving into Azure's data processing capabilities now. In that process, we are reassessing and adding more and more log data into log analytics. There's the obvious reason of, hey, we all love log analytics. There's the secondary reason of log analytics is the main gateway into Azure Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel now. And I launched Azure Sentinel a couple of years ago, and it's top of mind for me to make sure all of our data is there. There's one other aspect of your question that I'll answer here quickly. In addition to making those logs available to you over time, we're also going to start using the data in those logs to feed our own AI processing and our own advanced analytics to move endpoint analytics and proactive remediations forward. This, as I said in our roadmap conversation, is a really big area of investment for us. It's the reason we brought analytics into the core of MEM out from just sort of the island of Windows so we could start pulling in other data. And so, watch this space for some cool stuff over the next couple of years on that as well.
That's very cool, Steve. And the last official question from here, also anonymous, but the attendee saw something about the 802.1x news for Windows and was very curious about that.
Yeah. This is such a great question because it represents the reality of management so perfectly. The problem is never, everybody has kind of their unique set of problems without which they can't be successful. And this is one of them. 802.1x is a long-standing Wi-Fi protocol that allows endpoint authentication to using some sort of password management backend, often Radius or something else. And the way you configure the endpoint to do the 802.1x dance varies by platform. We're now bringing native support for 802.1x Windows configuration to the Intune, directly into Intune. You've been able to do it for a long time with other mechanisms, but we're now bringing native support for 802.1x policies right into Intune. And if you have this problem, you're going to love this solution. If you don't have this problem, then you'll never notice it.
Really great. So I said it was the last question, but you know what? I forgot one because Bruce, he went into the chat and actually wrote there. And Bruce, he actually had one of the same questions that I actually have, Steve. So he wanted to talk a little about the remote help and the costs about that. Is there something about that if you have education, it is for free, and if you are a private customer, you actually have to pay?
It's a great question. We've seen that question pop up a lot the last couple of days. Thank you for asking. The process for establishing pricing at Microsoft is complicated enough that I can't say much right now in public. What I will say is that we're definitely hearing the feedback, and we're looking as we think about the advanced management bundle itself, we're thinking about ways to manage exactly the question that you brought up. So I don't have anything to say about it today, other than that I hear and appreciate the feedback, and thank you for the question.
All right, Steve. We've spent almost the whole hour with you, and I thought it would be like this because you're a popular man, and having the roadmap here is awesome. Of course, I've heard it before because we've had some summits going on, maybe, yeah. But now some of the other attendees here have been hearing a little bit about the roadmap, and I really appreciate that you made your time and came here to spend a full hour with us.
No, thank you so much. It's such a joy to be able to tell the story. It's my favorite subject. I would be interested in feedback of whether it was too much data. I kind of decided that I would just give you the whole fire hose as fast as I could because this is a very sophisticated audience, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I certainly am happy to be available and make my team available offline for any other follow-up questions.
Thank you, Steve. So, Angel people, do we have any more for Steve? Then it's now. Otherwise, we will close down the event and say thank you for coming to the Endpoint Management Summit 2022. It's been awesome to host this for you. And thank you to all the sponsors, of course.
Yeah, thank you to everyone. Nothing more to say. I think the journey has been amazing. To be honest, when I created this group 3 years ago, exactly 3 years ago, I created this community. If you tell me 3 years ago that we are here today, exactly, I won't believe it. But that means that we are doing it the right way. We are going to keep in that way. That is our first summit, where we are going to do more and more and more. And we're trying to get more talent to the community, to join more people passionate like us, listen people like Steve, and try to bring, bigger. There are no limits. If you ask, as many people say, hey, what are you? No limits. As long as we are growing in this way, there are no limits. So thank you so much, everyone. And I appreciate all the help for everyone, speaker, I invite the speaker, sponsor, everyone. I think that this experience has been really great and nothing else. So thank you, and thank you. I hope you enjoy this webinar, this summit. Thank you so much. See you again. Nice, Steve. Thank you so much. Very appreciated. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you.